Hi, and welcome to the Colorado Department of Higher Education's Educator Financial Aid Training. This is the FAFSA CASFA scenarios. And for clarification, these FAFSA CASFA scenarios should be viewed after the FAFSA CASFA portions. I am Sophie Vogel, the CASFA Program Manager.
Hi, Sophie. I'm Jennifer Lucero, the Outreach Navigator for the Colorado Department of Higher Education. We just want to let you know that these exercises are for practice. Some scenarios have multiple answers, are ambiguous, and can be quite complex. Please be patient and understanding with your financial aid learning. Sophie will take us through the first scenario.
Thanks. Okay, so number one, FAFSA or CASFA. Your student shares they are a refugee and are in the process of becoming a U.S. citizen. They said their citizenship ceremony will probably be in February of 2027. Which financial aid application should your student complete and why? Next slide, please. So for this one, the potential solutions are your student is an eligible non-citizen and should complete a FAFSA. For a list of who are considered eligible non-citizens, please refer to this website. Since your student is waiting for their U.S. citizenship status and that status isn't finalized, it's not relevant to their financial aid eligibility. Immigration statuses that are in progress do not affect financial aid eligibility. Your turn, Jen. Next
Thanks,
scenario.
Sophie. That can be a tricky question, but in the next scenario, a student schedules an appointment to complete FAFSA. Student has lived with aunt's household for 5 years. Aunt has not legally adopted student and receives financial support from both parents. Aunt has her studentaid.gov account created from her children. Students' biological parents live in Mexico, are divorced, and do not live together, and both parents provide the same amount of financial support to the student. Who is the student's contributor on FAFSA? There are many elements actually to this scenario, but since the aunt has not legally adopted the student, the aunt is not a contributor on the student's FAFSA. Actually, the biological parents who are in Mexico will be the contributors since they provide the same amount of financial support. The parent with the greater amount of income and assets will be the contributor. And if both parents have the same amount of assets and income, they can decide amongst themselves. But like we were saying, there are many layers to this question. If the aunt does not have court documents that prove she is the legal guardian of the student, then the biological parents would provide that information. And also, the parents will need to provide their foreign earned income as part of the annual gross income on the student's FAFSA. The parent wizard is demonstrated in the FAFSA portion. So if you have not watched the FAFSA portion, you'll see it demonstrated in there, and that can help students figure out who their contributor is. And then also with dependency status, that's also why during the FAFSA portion I mentioned, it's crucial that students ensure they do not have a special or unusual circumstance that they fall into, because if they were in this situation and they did have one of those circumstances, they could get provisional independent status to complete the FAFSA without a contributor.
Thank you so much, Jen. That's a really tough one. And also, just like Jen was mentioning, one of those unusual circumstances could potentially be the biological parents would pose a threat to the child if the child contacted them. So, again, unusual circumstances are very specific, and we have some resources for you if you're not familiar enough with unusual circumstances. Thank you. Next slide. So this one is the CASFA eligibility expansion. So this student was born in Colorado. They are a U.S. citizen and they are from a mixed immigration status family. So the parents express fear about completing a FAFSA due to the requirement of sharing their information with federal student aid, which is FSA. How do you advise the family about which financial aid application they should complete? Ooh, and it's not quite a trick question, but I do want to pause here to point out I don't know what financial aid application they should complete. You, as their advisor, as their teacher, as their friend, you don't know either. The only people who can actually figure this out is the student and family. So you can teach them what are the pros and cons, and you can provide lots of information, but at the end, the individual family has to make the decision that's best for themselves. Um, Moving on, a few important questions that I recommend you use to help the family determine how they're going to complete a financial aid application. So, can the student afford college if they don't complete a FAFSA, thus forfeiting federal student aid, potentially up to $7,395 per year in federal Pell Grant? So, if the family says yes, we can cover that, then that isn't a huge concern. Did the parents complete a FAFSA for an older sibling? So if there is an older sibling who graduated high school 2 years ago and the parents completed a FAFSA for that older sibling, federal student aid already has their information and there would be no additional harm in giving their information to the federal government again. Same with ITIN. Have the parents filed taxes before using an ITIN, which is Individualized Taxpayer Identification Number? If the parents have filed taxes using an ITIN, the federal government already has their information and there would be no harm in providing it again. Next slide, please. Thank you, Jen. So some potential solutions for this are the student can complete a CASFA, even though they are eligible for federal student aid, if their family wants to keep their information within Colorado higher education institutions. CASFA students are only applying for state and institutional aid, not federal student aid. So it's important to point out to any families interested that if the parents completed a FAFSA for an older sibling, FSA already has their information and there seems to be no reason to withhold it now. Again, same with filing taxes using an individualized taxpayer identification number. The IRS already has their information and there may be no reason to withhold it now. And just pointing out the students who benefit from the CASFA eligibility expansion are a very small select group of students. So please be cautious with any assumptions that the CASFA eligibility expansion will benefit lots and lots of students because that is not very likely. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Sophie. Dependent student is anxious about completing their FAFSA. Parents refuse to file or share 2024 tax information on FAFSA. Parent rationalizes refusal by saying student isn't going to get anything. How do you advise your student? And it should be known that unless a student cuts all financial ties with parent, emancipation will not function for financial aid purposes. It should also be mentioned that just because a student's parents refuse to provide information, that does not give them the provisional independent status. So students should really work with their parents empower the student to cultivate a trusting relationship with the parents. I mean, that's going to be on a case-by-case basis, of course, but also encourage the student and parents to attend FAFSA CASFA events where they can ask questions and feel reassured. Connecting student and parent to financial aid office at the college or university of their choice could be very beneficial. There's also free tax services that they can be connected to, and the financial aid estimator is a great tool for parents to see what their sort of out-of-pocket cost could be and what it would look like if they do file for financial aid. Do you want to add anything, Sophie?
Yes, I do. I don't know how you knew that. Um, I have had this happen to me when I've been working with students. They're saying, my parents said no. And I often do some coaching with my students in how to navigate that. And sometimes I think it's because instead of a 12th grader saying, hey, mom, dad, when can you help me with this financial aid application, etc. Sometimes students are inclined to say things like, Mom, do my FAFSA now. And so then obviously the parent might respond and say no. So coaching the student on how to say, hey, mom, this financial aid application is important to both you and I really would like your support with it. When is a good time to talk about it? And mom says Saturday at 11 a.m. So then the student needs to put a reminder in their phone. And on Saturday at 11 a.m., the student needs to approach the parent and say, hey, you said now would be an okay time for us to work on my FAFSA. Is that the case? Et cetera, et cetera. So those sort of things sometimes instead of students asking their parents, they sort of get to a habit of telling their parents. And I just want to point out that this is a step towards maturity in family relationships, right? And the student is getting ready to be more and more independent. So instead of telling your parent exactly what a student wants, I recommend the student asking the parent and sort of being a collaborator in this task and in this project. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Sophie. That's great advice. Definitely. For our scenario 5, this is our last scenario in regards to 529 account reporting. Where are 529 assets reported if it is in the student's name or their parent's name or their grandparent's name? Just so we're all on the same page, a 529 account is a college savings account. There are more and more of them as we're seeing. So if the 529 is in the student's name, it will be reported in the asset section of the student's FAFSA. If it's in the parent's name, it will be reported in the parent's asset section. And if it's in the grandparent's name or anyone else's name, then it will not be reported on the FAFSA or the CASFA. Pretty straightforward there, but anything to add, Sophie?
No, maybe just that bullet point there. If the parents are divorced and the 529 is in the parent's name that isn't a contributor, the 529 won't be reported. So there are some cases where it could be confusing, but make sure you follow the instructions about reporting, and you can always look them up online, which is actually the next slide. So perfect segue. Here are some resources. One of the resources that I referred to for the first scenario was this website about eligible non-citizens. So these are students who are eligible for federal student aid, even though they are not U.S. citizens. Another really valuable website is the non-US tax information website we put here. So this is for families who have income from countries other than the United States. So this was part of the contributor scenario. Another piece of the contributor scenario was the parent wizard. So that is a really terrific resource that helps the student walk through. We also put here the financial aid estimator. This is a great way for students to try to determine whether they might be awarded that $7,395 maximum Pell Grant, or whether they'll be awarded less of that or none of that, that sort of thing. Another really wonderful resource is here about dependency status. If you have students who have any questions about whether they're a dependent student or an independent student, please refer to this. The FAFSA continues to do what it used to do with dependency status. Confuse a lot of students who say, but I don't live with my parents and I'm under 24 years old, but I have a job and I pay my own rent. And when you're working with students who have that sort of claim, I recommend using this resource to point out you are in fact a dependent student based on what federal student aid has to say about that situation. So helping those students understand they are still considered dependent for the FAFSA. And then here's some information. Go ahead. Thanks, Jen. So this is our website. We have a lot of resources on our website. We have FAFSA resources. We have CASFA resources. We have tons of other resources as well. So please feel free to check out our website anytime. And then there's Jennifer's email and my email, and also some shared inboxes if you want to reach out about specific programs. We look forward to connecting with you all in person, and we're really grateful that you've been taking advantage of this electronic educator financial aid training. I think that's it for me, Jen. Anything for
No, yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of the training.